Welcome to Sleepy Expeditions. 138,000 miles from Earth. No gravity, no air outside, no sound of any kind beyond the hum of the machine keeping you alive. 4 hours ago, you landed on the moon. Not orbited it, not flew past it, landed. Set a spacecraft down on the surface of another world for the first time in human history, climbed out of the descent engine's exhaust cloud, and reported back to a planet of 3.5 billion people. The Eagle has landed, and now you cannot sleep. You are Neil Armstrong. It is July 20th, 1969. Outside your window, the Sea of Tranquility is absolutely still, grey and ancient and silent in a way that no place on Earth has ever been silent, because this silence has been here for 4 billion years and nothing has ever interrupted it until tonight. Find a comfortable position. Let the imaginary weightlessness settle over you. The extraordinary lightness of 1/6 gravity, your body barely pressing against the hammock, the moon's gentle pull almost imperceptible. Close your eyes. In a few hours you will make history, but first the night. 4 hours ago, at 4:17 p.m. Eastern Time, you set the Eagle down on the surface of the Sea of Tranquility. The landing was not quite as planned. The planned landing site, selected months ago by mission controllers in Houston from photographs taken by earlier unmanned probes, was a relatively flat and clear area on the lunar surface. But as the Eagle descended, you could see through your window that the site was strewn with boulders, large enough to tip or damage the spacecraft on landing, dangerous in ways that the photographs had not shown. You took manual control. This is the thing that people who were not there sometimes forget about Neil Armstrong. He was not merely an astronaut, a passenger in an extraordinary vehicle. He was a pilot. He had been flying since he was 16 years old, had flown 78 combat missions in Korea before he was 22, had flown experimental aircraft at Edwards Air Force Base that most pilots would not go near. He had the particular kind of competence that comes from spending thousands of hours in cockpits where the margin for error is very small. And he had learned, over those years, to make decisions in seconds that other people would take minutes to make. With 60 seconds of fuel remaining in the descent engine, you flew the Eagle manually over the boulder field, searching for a clear area. The guidance computer was throwing error codes that no one had seen in training. 12 no 2, 12 no 2, the computer alarm repeating, and Houston's voice in your ear telling you to continue. The computer is fine, keep going. The fuel counter was dropping. 30 seconds, 20, and then a flat area, clear enough. You set her down. The engine stopped. The dust that had been blowing away from the exhaust fell instantly. No air to carry it, no wind, just the dust dropping straight down in the moon's gravity, settling back onto the surface as if nothing had happened. Silence. You and Buzz Aldrin looked at each other. Then you reported to Houston. Tranquility Base here, the Eagle has landed. In mission control in Houston, 240,000 miles away. Men who had spent 8 years working toward this moment put their faces in their hands. Some of them cried. Others simply sat very still for a moment, unable to quite process that it had worked. That the thing they had been building towards since before some of them had started shaving had actually, against every probability, happened. You were too busy to cry. There were post-landing checklists to complete, systems to verify, the readiness of the spacecraft to be confirmed. If the Eagle's systems were not functioning correctly, you would need to abort immediately. There was a launch window from the lunar surface that could not be missed. So you worked through the checklist methodically in the way that you have always worked through checklists, and Houston confirmed the systems one by one, and after an hour of this, it was confirmed the Eagle was safe on the surface. You could stay. Outside your window, the moon. The surface of the Sea of Tranquility is not what the name suggests. There is no sea. There has never been a sea here. The name was given centuries ago by astronomers who looked at the dark basaltic plains through their early telescopes and imagined from the Earth that they might be water. They are not water. They are ancient lava flows, solidified 3 billion years ago, pocked by the impacts of meteorites of every size over billions of years of bombardment, ground by that same bombardment into a fine grey powder called regolith that covers everything. What you can see through the window is grey, every shade of grey that exists, almost from the pale silver of the sunlit surface to the absolute black of the shadows. And on the moon, where there is no atmosphere to scatter light, the shadows are absolute. The terminator, the line between sunlight and shadow, is perfectly sharp. On one side of a small boulder, brilliant light. On the other, complete darkness. The sun is low on the horizon, as it has been since before you landed. The landing was timed so that the sun would be at a low angle, casting long shadows that would make the terrain easier to read. Even now, hours after landing, the sun has barely moved. The moon rotates so slowly that a lunar day lasts approximately 29 Earth days. The sun that is near the horizon now will still be near the horizon when you lift off tomorrow. Time works differently here. Beyond the immediate area illuminated by the sun, the sky is black, completely, absolutely, uniformly black. There are stars in that black sky, more of them than you can see from Earth, undimmed by any atmosphere, burning with the same fixed brilliance you remember from the cupola of the space station, but you cannot see them right now because the sunlit surface is too bright. Your eyes adjusted for the light, the stars lost in the contrast. The horizon is very close. This is one of the things that surprises you about the moon, how close the horizon is. On Earth, the curve of the planet is gentle enough that the horizon seems far away, a distant line you can never quite reach. On the moon, which is much smaller, the horizon curves away sharply, close enough that it seems like you could walk to it in a few minutes. The effect is disorienting, making the visible world feel simultaneously vast and intimate. Vast because you know intellectually how large the landscape is. Intimate because the close horizon makes it look like a small stage set. You have been trained to observe and report. to convert experience into data, to describe what you see in terms that can be transmitted back to Houston and understood by people who are not here, but sitting in the Eagle in the hours after landing, looking out at the surface through that window. You find that the training is not quite sufficient. There are no words in any briefing document for what it looks like to sit on the moon. The voice of Houston is in your ear. Not constantly. The communications protocol allows for silence, for the crew to work and think without a constant stream of chatter from mission control. But the connection is always there, the carrier wave always open. The knowledge that 240,000 miles away there are people listening, watching the data streams from the Eagle's systems, ready to respond if something goes wrong. The communication delay is about 1.25 seconds each way. This means that when you speak to Houston, there is a pause of 2.5 seconds before you hear the response. Long enough to be noticeable, short enough not to be disorienting once you are used to it. The voice that comes back is Charlie Duke tonight, the capsule communicator, Capcom, a fellow astronaut whose job is to be the single voice of mission control, filtering the information and instructions from the dozens of flight controllers in Houston into clear, calm transmissions. Charlie Duke's voice has a South Carolina accent and a quality of relaxed competence that is exactly what you want in a Capcom during a mission. He does not panic, he does not editorialize. He gives you the information you need in the language you need it in, and he trusts you to know what to do with it. After the landing, the original plan was for you and Buzz to sleep for several hours before the EVA, the extravehicular activity, the moonwalk. The thinking was that you would be rested, fresh, at your best for the most important part of the mission. Mission planners had built sleep periods into the timeline with care, but you are not going to sleep. It is not possible, lying on the surface of the moon, to sleep on schedule. Your body knows that sleep is the appropriate biological response to the hour and the accumulated fatigue of the journey. You have been awake for a very long time, and the landing used a quantity of focused attention that has a physical cost. You are tired, but the mind will not cooperate. You mentioned to Houston in the hours after landing that you and Buzz would prefer to begin the EVA early rather than follow the scheduled sleep period. Houston considered, mission controllers consulted, and eventually they agreed. The EVA would begin approximately 6 hours after landing rather than the scheduled 8. You will walk on the moon at approximately 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, but that is still hours away, and in the meantime the moon is outside your window, and you are here, and you cannot sleep. You were born in Wapakoneta, Ohio, on August 5th, 1930. The son of a state auditor and his wife. You grew up in a series of small Ohio towns. Your father's work required frequent moves, and by the time you were a teenager, you had lived in 16 different places. You were a quiet child by most accounts. Observant, technically minded, more interested in how things worked than in the social dynamics of the various schools you passed through. You became interested in flight at 6 years old when your father took you on a ride in a Ford Trimotor, a small corrugated metal aircraft that was already considered old-fashioned in 1936, But that was, for a 6-year-old boy from Ohio, an introduction to a world that would occupy the rest of his life. You began taking flying lessons at 14, paying for them by working various jobs in Wapakoneta. You soloed at 16 before you had your driver's license. At 17, you received your student pilot certificate. The Navy called you up after high school. The Korean War was beginning and the Navy needed pilots, and you fit the profile. You were sent to Pensacola for training, and then to carrier qualification, and then to a squadron in Korea where you flew 78 combat missions in Grumman Panthers, mostly ground attack work, flying low over hostile territory, delivering ordnance, coming under fire. You were shot down once, your aircraft's wing clipped by a cable strung between hills by North Korean forces as a trap for low-flying aircraft. You managed to nurse the damaged plane back to friendly territory and ejected safely. You were 21 years old. After Korea, you went back to university, Purdue, on a scholarship, studying aeronautical engineering, which was the formal name for the thing you had been teaching yourself since you were 6 years old. Then a posting to Edwards Air Force Base in California, the test pilot's paradise, where the most advanced aircraft in the world were flown by the most skilled pilots available, and where the frontier of human flight was pushed back week by week in increments measured in altitude records and speed records and the occasional catastrophic loss. You were good at this, quietly, consistently, technically excellent in a way that impressed people who were themselves very good, which is the most demanding standard. You flew the X-15 rocket plane to the edge of space. You were considered for the original Mercury astronaut selection, but were not chosen. You were chosen for the second astronaut group, the New Nine, selected in 1962, and from there the path to the moon was a series of steps, each building on the last, each demonstrating the qualities that would eventually put you in the left seat of the Eagle. You are not a man who talks much about what he feels. This is not evasion or coldness, it is a genuine preference, the result of a personality formed by the culture of test pilots, where emotional restraint is both a professional value and a survival mechanism. Men who talk about how they feel in cockpits are men whose attention is divided. You have always preferred to let the work speak for itself, but tonight on the moon you allow yourself to feel something. Not pride exactly, something more complex than pride, something that has to do with the distance between Wapakoneta, Ohio in 1936, a 6-year-old boy in a corrugated metal airplane, and here, tonight, on the surface of another world. The distance is not merely geographic. It is everything that happened between those 2 points. Every flight, every decision, every risk taken and survived, every moment of skill applied under pressure, every year of work by tens of thousands of people who built the vehicles and wrote the software and designed the procedures and trained the crews and sent this mission to the moon, all of it led here, to this window, to this grey landscape, to this extraordinary, impossible, deeply human moment. 8 years, 1 month and 26 days. That is how long it has been since John F. Kennedy stood before a joint session of Congress on May 25, 1961, and committed the United States to landing a man on the moon before the end of the decade. Kennedy made the speech 9 days after Alan Shepard became the first American in space, a 15-minute suborbital flight, modest by any standard, particularly by the standard of what the Soviet Union had already done. Yuri Gagarin had completed a full orbit of the Earth the previous month. The space race, by any reasonable measure, was not going well for America. Kennedy knew this. His advisors knew this. The speech was not an expression of confidence. It was an act of will. A declaration that America would do a thing that, at the moment of declaration, no one knew how to do using technologies that did not yet exist, in a time frame that left almost no margin for the inevitable failures and setbacks that any program of this ambition would encounter. When Kennedy made the commitment, NASA had less than 15 minutes of human spaceflight experience. What followed was one of the most concentrated periods of technical achievement in human history. In 8 years, the program moved from 15-minute suborbital hops to orbiting the Earth, to orbiting the Moon, to landing on it, each step building on the last. Each program, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, designed not only to accomplish its own objectives, but to generate the knowledge and experience needed for the next one. The cost was enormous. At its peak, the Apollo program consumed 4% of the entire federal budget of the United States. 380,000 people worked on it. Engineers and scientists and machinists and seamstresses who sewed the spacesuits and welders who joined the Saturn V sections and programmers who wrote the guidance software and flight controllers who monitored every parameter of every flight, and the astronauts themselves, who were the visible face of something that was, at its heart, a vast collective act. And 3 of those astronauts died, Gus Grissom, Ed White and Roger Chaffee, in a fire on the launch pad during a ground test of Apollo 1, January 27, 1967. The fire lasted 14 seconds. None of them escaped. The program stopped. For 20 months, while investigators determined what had gone wrong and engineers redesigned the spacecraft, there were no Apollo flights. The schedule slipped. The end of the decade seemed, for a period, genuinely in doubt, and then the program resumed. And the engineers who had redesigned the spacecraft had done their work well, and the flights that followed demonstrated this, and the confidence that had been shaken was slowly rebuilt, and Apollo 8 orbited the Moon at Christmas 1968, and sent back photographs of the Earth rising above the lunar horizon that became among the most important photographs ever taken. And then Apollo 9 and Apollo 10, testing the lunar module in Earth orbit and lunar orbit respectively, each mission expanding the envelope, each crew doing their job with the methodical professionalism that the program demanded. And then Apollo 11. You think about all of this tonight, lying in the Eagle on the surface of the Moon, about Gus and Ed and Roger who did not get here, about the 380,000 people who are not here but whose work is present in every system of the spacecraft around you, in the guidance computer that flew the landing trajectory, in the descent engine that fired for 12 minutes to bring you from orbit to the surface, in the spacesuit hanging on the wall that will keep you alive tomorrow when you open the hatch. This is not your achievement alone. You have never believed it was. The Eagle is very small. This is the thing that photographs do not convey. The lunar module is a remarkable piece of engineering, compact, functional, designed with the kind of ruthless efficiency that comes from every gram of weight mattering enormously in a vehicle that has to descend from lunar orbit to the surface and then ascend back to orbit and dock with the command module. But it is not comfortable. The descent stage, which is sitting on the moon right now and will never move again, contains the descent engine and most of the propellant and the landing legs and the scientific equipment you will deploy tomorrow. The ascent stage, which is where you are now, contains everything needed for the crew and for the ascent back to lunar orbit. The ascent engine, the environmental systems, the communications equipment, the guidance computer, and the two of you. There are no seats. You and Buzz stand up in the Eagle. There is no room to sit. The cabin is roughly the size of a large closet, and every surface is covered with switches and circuit breakers and gauges and displays. The floor in front of your position has small triangular windows that you look through to see the surface below during landing. The walls are covered in the gold-colored mylar insulation that gives the lunar module its characteristic appearance. It is not designed for comfort. It is designed for survival and function. You sleep, attempt to sleep, in hammocks that are strung across the cabin. The hammocks are thin, functional things, designed to keep you off the floor and give your bodies somewhere to rest in the 1/6 gravity of the moon. 1/6 gravity means that you weigh about 27 pounds instead of your Earth weight, which should make sleeping easier. In practice, it makes it strange. Your body does not sink into the hammock the way it would on Earth, does not feel the comfortable resistance of a surface against your back, just floats slightly in the nylon webbing with a lightness that your nervous system has not entirely accepted as normal. The suits are partially unpressurized now, hung on the wall. The oxygen comes from the environmental control system, which hisses softly. The temperature is regulated, but not perfectly. The direct sunlight heats one side of the spacecraft, and the shadow cools the other, and the system that manages this is not entirely silent. And outside the moon, you can see a small section of the surface through your window from the hammock if you turn your head slightly. A grey expanse, utterly still, the shadows of the Eagle's legs visible in the low-angle sunlight. Nothing moves. Nothing has moved here in geological time. The footprints you and Buzz will make tomorrow, the first human footprints on another world, will remain exactly as you leave them for millions of years. There is no wind to smooth them, no rain to wash them, no organism to disturb them. Just the slow erosion of micrometeorite impacts over geological time, so gradual as to be invisible on any human timescale. The permanence of it is difficult to hold in your mind. The man in the other hammock is Buzz Aldrin. Edwin Eugene Aldrin Jr., born January 20th, 1930, in Montclair, New Jersey, the son of a military officer and aviation pioneer, educated at West Point, a fighter pilot in Korea with 66 combat missions, a doctorate in astronautics from MIT, an astronaut since 1963, he is by any measure one of the most technically accomplished human beings who has ever lived. His doctoral thesis, line-of-sight guidance techniques for manned orbital rendezvous, became the foundational document for the orbital rendezvous procedures that made the entire Apollo program possible. When astronauts dock spacecraft in orbit, they are using in large part procedures that Buzz Aldrin worked out mathematically in a thesis he wrote at MIT. He is, among his peers, known as a meticulous thinker, a man who approaches problems with a rigor that can border on the obsessive, but that produces results. You have known him for 6 years. The relationship between the two of you is professional and respectful, and somewhat formal. This is the culture of the astronaut corps, where emotional intimacy is not the norm and where the work is the primary language of connection. You know his capabilities completely, you trust them completely. You have trained together for months for this specific mission, and in that training you have developed the wordless coordination that comes from practicing the same procedures until they are automatic. He is lying in his hammock now, possibly asleep. His breathing, if you could hear it over the hum of the environmental system, would tell you. But you cannot hear it, and you do not want to disturb him if he is sleeping, because one of you sleeping is better than neither of you sleeping, and there is nothing to discuss that cannot wait. Tomorrow you will open the hatch together, and you will go out first, the mission protocol established this months ago after considerable discussion, and you will climb down the ladder and you will step onto the surface, and then Buzz will follow. 2 men on the moon. Through a small window on the side of the cabin, you can see the Earth. It is a circle of light in the black sky, brilliant against the darkness, about 4 times the apparent size of the moon as seen from Earth. It is not full. From where you are, you can see the Terminator crossing it, one side lit and the other in shadow. The lit portion shows blue and white, the familiar swirl of ocean and cloud that you have seen in photographs, but that looks different from here. Different in a way that is difficult to articulate. The photographs show a beautiful planet. What you see through the window is something more than beautiful. It is home, not in the abstract sentimental sense of the word, but in the precise, specific sense. Every person you have ever known is on that small circle of light. Every place you have ever been, every meal you have ever eaten, every conversation you have ever had, every flight you have ever made, all of it is there, in a circle of light you can cover with your thumb. You have been an astronaut for 7 years. You have thought about this moment, about being far enough from the Earth to see it whole. Many times. You have read the accounts of the astronauts who went before you, the Mercury and Gemini crews who saw the Earth from orbit and tried to describe what it looked like. You thought you understood what they were describing. You did not. The photographs from Apollo 8, the famous Earthrise photograph, taken by Bill Anders on Christmas Eve 1968, as the spacecraft came around the far side of the moon, are among the most reproduced images in human history. They show the Earth rising above the lunar horizon, small and blue and white and fragile looking against the black of space. People who saw that photograph were moved by it in ways they struggled to explain. It won environmental awards. It changed, by some accounts, the way people thought about the planet. You understand why, looking at it now. There is something about seeing the whole planet at once. All of it, every continent and ocean and weather system visible simultaneously. The whole thing fitting within the frame of a small window. That changes how you think about it. The divisions that seem so important from within, the borders, the conflicts, the distinctions between nations and peoples, are invisible from here. What is visible is the planet itself. One planet, one atmosphere, one ocean. It is 4 in the morning in Houston right now. Most of the flight controllers have gone home for a few hours, replaced by a skeleton crew who will manage the long quiet wait before the EVA begins. The people of the world are mostly asleep. It is night over America and the Atlantic and Europe and parts of Asia, and the lights of the cities are invisible from here, lost in the general brightness of the lit side of the earth. They are sleeping, and you are here, and the earth turns very slowly in your window, and you watch it for a long time. The moon is 4.5 billion years old. It formed from the debris of a collision. A Mars-sized body called Theia struck the young Earth approximately 4.5 billion years ago, and the debris from that collision coalesced in Earth orbit, drawn together by gravity, cooling and solidifying over millions of years into the moon that has been in the sky ever since. For the first billion years of its existence, the moon was geologically active. Volcanoes erupted. Lava flowed across the surface. The dark plains that early astronomers called seas, the Sea of Tranquility where you are resting now, the Sea of Serenity, the ocean of storms, are ancient lava flows from this period, vast floods of basaltic rock that filled the low-lying areas of the young moon and then solidified 3 billion years ago into the flat grey plains you see today. Since then, almost nothing. The moon has no atmosphere. Without an atmosphere, there is no weather, no erosion by wind or water, no chemical weathering of the rocks. The landscape is shaped only by impacts, meteorites of every size, from microscopic dust grains to occasional large objects that excavate the circular craters that cover the surface. The rate of large impacts has slowed enormously since the early solar system, but it has never stopped entirely. New craters are still being made, slowly on timescales so long they are invisible to human observation. The surface you will walk on tomorrow has not changed significantly in 3 billion years. The regolith, the fine grey powder that covers everything, has been ground from the underlying rock by billions of years of micrometeorite impacts. Each impact vaporizing a tiny amount of rock and then allowing it to condense again as glass beads and irregular fragments. The regolith is strange material. Under a microscope it is sharp-edged and abrasive, nothing like the smooth sand it resembles. The Apollo engineers worried about it, about how it would behave under the astronauts' boots, how it would affect the spacesuits, what it would do if it got into the mechanical systems. Nobody had ever walked on it before. Nobody knew for certain what it would feel like. When you step off the ladder tomorrow, you will be the first person to feel lunar regolith under your boots. The first person to know, in your body rather than in theory, what the moon's surface is like to stand on. This is not a small thing. Human beings have been looking at the moon for their entire existence as a species, have told stories about it and worshipped it and navigated by it and planted crops by it and written poems about it and fallen in love under it. For all of human history, for all of the time that our species has been looking up, the moon has been exactly what it looks like from Earth, a light in the sky, beautiful, constant, utterly inaccessible. Tomorrow you will touch it. Space is not silent. This is one of the things that surprises people who have not thought carefully about it. Sound is a pressure wave moving through a medium, air or water or solid material. In the vacuum of space where there is no medium, there can be no sound. This is literally true. If the Eagle's ascent engine fires tomorrow and sends you back to lunar orbit, the only indication from outside the spacecraft would be the visible flame and the physical movement of the vehicle. No sound, not even a whisper, but inside the spacecraft there is sound. The environmental control system hums. The pumps that circulate water through the cooling loops make their soft mechanical sounds. The fans that move the air through the cabin make their own note, slightly different from the pumps, overlapping with them to create the constant acoustic background of a functioning spacecraft. Occasionally a relay clicks. Occasionally the structure of the spacecraft makes a faint sound as it responds to thermal changes, expanding very slightly as the sun heats one side, contracting on the other. These sounds are not intrusive. They are, after 4 days aboard Apollo 11, simply the ambient sound of where you are, as natural and unremarkable as the sounds of a house at night. The settling of wood and the hum of appliances that the occupants have long since stopped hearing, but the silence outside is absolute. You know this intellectually. You have known it since before you were an astronaut. It is one of the basic facts of space that any educated person knows. But knowing it and being surrounded by it are different things. The vacuum outside the thin aluminium skin of the lunar module is not merely quiet. It is the most complete silence that exists anywhere in the known universe. No medium for sound to move through, not a whisper, not a vibration, not the ghost of a noise. The surface of the moon has been this silent for 4.5 billion years. Whatever sounds the young moon made, the roar of volcanic eruptions, the impact of meteorites, the creak and groan of a cooling crust, those sounds ended billions of years ago, and since then silence, a silence so old and so complete that the word silence is not quite adequate for it. You lie in your hammock and you listen to the hum of the spacecraft, and you try to imagine, just beyond the wall beside you, what nothing sounds like. You are on the moon because of fear. This is not the story that will be told in the years and decades after tonight. The story that will be told is the one that is also true. That humanity reached beyond its planet because of curiosity, because of the explorer's instinct, because of the deep human need to go further and see more and understand what lies beyond the next horizon. That story is real. It is part of why you are here, but it is not the whole story. You are here because on October 4th, 1957, a small metal sphere about the size of a beach ball was launched into orbit by the Soviet Union and spent the next 3 weeks broadcasting a simple radio signal, beep, 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 that could be picked up by amateur radio operators around the world, including in the United States, where it was heard with a mixture of wonder and profound visceral alarm. Sputnik, the first artificial satellite in history. A Soviet satellite launched by a rocket that was, the American military establishment quickly recognized, not merely a satellite launcher but an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of carrying a nuclear warhead to any point on Earth. The fear that swept through the American government in the weeks after Sputnik was not irrational. The Soviet Union had demonstrated in a single launch that the technology existed to deliver nuclear weapons from one continent to another with no possibility of interception. The comfortable assumption that 2 oceans and the world's most powerful air force provided adequate protection was suddenly obsolete, and the public relations damage was equally significant. The Soviet Union had beaten the United States into space, the most advanced technological civilization in history, as Americans like to think of themselves, had been beaten to orbit by a communist state that, as recently as a decade before, had been devastated by the most destructive war in history. The implications for the global competition between the two systems, for the question of which model, American capitalism or Soviet communism, would prove itself superior in the eyes of the world's developing nations, were enormous. Then, 4 months after Sputnik, Sputnik 2, and this one carried a passenger, a dog named Laika, the first living creature from Earth to orbit the planet. Laika did not survive the mission. The spacecraft had no recovery system, and she died from overheating a few hours after launch, but the achievement stood. The Soviets had put a living thing in orbit. The Americans launched their first satellite, Explorer 1, in January 1958, 4 months after Sputnik. It was smaller than Sputnik. The first American attempt had exploded on the launch pad in front of the press. The footage broadcast on every television network in the country. A catastrophically public failure at the worst possible moment. The space race had begun, and America was losing. What followed was a remarkable period in the history of 2 nations that were simultaneously the most powerful states on Earth and the most frightened of each other. Both possessed nuclear weapons in quantities that could destroy civilization. Both were spending enormous resources on military technology in a competition that could not be won militarily, because winning militarily meant ending the world. Space became the arena where the competition could be conducted without destroying the planet. Every Soviet space first was a propaganda victory in the global struggle for the allegiance of the non-aligned nations, the countries of Asia and Africa and Latin America that were choosing in those years which model to follow. The Soviet Union could point to Sputnik and say, our system produced this, our system can produce more, align with us. The Americans understood this perfectly. When Yuri Gagarin became the first human being in space on April 12, 1961, completing a full orbit of the Earth in 108 minutes, returning safely, becoming instantly the most famous person in the world, the American response was not merely embarrassment, it was crisis. The question being asked in Washington was not only how to catch up in the space race, but whether the entire framework of American foreign policy, built on the assumption of American technological superiority, could survive further humiliations. Kennedy's speech 9 days after Alan Shepard's suborbital flight was the answer to that question. The moon. Not because the moon was the next logical step in space exploration. It was not, particularly. The next logical steps were Earth orbit, space stations, understanding the effects of long-duration spaceflight on the human body. The moon was a leap, technically and financially, far beyond what the program could reasonably accomplish in any near-term timeline. But the moon was beyond what the Soviets could claim to be close to, which made it strategically perfect. If America committed to the moon, the competition moved to a domain where the Soviets had no established lead. If America reached the moon first, the propaganda victory would be total, not merely a satellite or an orbit, but a human being on another world, the most dramatic demonstration of technological capability in history. Kennedy chose the moon because it was the hardest thing he could commit to. The hardness was the point. The Soviets, as it turned out, were also trying to reach the moon. Their lunar program, which was kept secret for decades and only became fully known after the Soviet Union dissolved, had been working toward a crewed moon landing throughout the 1960s. Their N-1 rocket, the Soviet equivalent of the Saturn V, was tested 4 times. It exploded 4 times, each failure more catastrophic than the last. The 4th and final test, in November 1972, produced one of the largest non-nuclear explosions in history, destroying the launch complex and ending the Soviet crewed lunar program. None of this was known to you in 1969. The Soviet lunar program was secret. What you knew was that the competition was real, that the Soviets were formidable, and that arriving on the moon first mattered in ways that went far beyond the scientific. But lying here tonight, in the Eagle, on the surface of the moon, the Cold War feels very far away. Not because it is not real, not because the geopolitics that put you here are not significant, but because from here, the distinction between American and Soviet, between the two systems whose competition has defined the world you grew up in, is invisible. What is visible is the Earth. One planet, no borders, no flags visible from 240,000 miles. Tomorrow you will plant an American flag in the lunar regolith. This is protocol required by the mission plan, and you will do it. But you have also been instructed by NASA and by the administration to make clear in your comments that you are here on behalf of all of humanity, that the plaque attached to the Eagle's descent stage reads not United States of America, but we came in peace for all mankind. Both things are true simultaneously. You are here because of a competition between two nations, and you are here on behalf of every human being who has ever looked up at the moon and wondered, both at the same time, without contradiction. This is perhaps the most human thing about the whole extraordinary enterprise. You have thought about what to say. This is the part of the mission that no amount of technical training could fully prepare you for. The words "mission controllers in Houston" had raised the question months ago, gently, carefully, aware that they were asking something that had no procedural answer. What will you say when you step onto the surface? You had thought about it. You are not a man who makes speeches, who reaches for the grand gesture or the memorable phrase. Your natural mode is understatement, the test pilot's mode, where what you felt and what you said were often very different things, and the difference was professional rather than dishonest. But this moment would not accept understatement. Whatever you said, and you knew, even then, that whatever you said would be heard by the largest television audience in human history, would be replayed and quoted and analysed for as long as people remembered this mission. It needed to be something that carried the weight of the moment without collapsing under it. You thought about it during the training, during the flight, and in the hours after landing, while Buzz slept and you could not. You thought about it again, turning the words over in your mind, testing them. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. You intended to say a man, one small step for a man. Without the article, the sentence creates a redundancy. Man and mankind meaning the same thing. With the article, the contrast is between the individual and the species. One small step for a single human being, an enormous leap for the entire human project. Whether you will say it correctly, in the moment, with the weight of what is happening, pressing down on every word, you cannot know, but the thought is there, one small step, one giant leap. The distance between what one person can do and what a species can accomplish when it decides to. The distance between Wapakoneta, Ohio, in 1936, and the surface of the moon in the distance between a 6-year-old boy in a corrugated metal airplane and a man lying in a hammock on another world, listening to the hum of a spacecraft, looking at the Earth through a small window. That distance is not measured in miles. It is measured in everything human beings have ever learned and built and discovered and passed on to the people who came after them, every generation adding its piece to the structure, every scientist and engineer and pilot and teacher and parent contributing something, the whole accumulation of human knowledge and effort and hope producing, eventually, this window, this surface, this moment. The hatch opens at 10:39 p.m. Eastern Time. You have been in the spacesuit for hours, the long methodical process of suiting up, pressurizing, checking systems, depressurizing the cabin to vacuum so the hatch can open. Every step on a checklist that has been rehearsed hundreds of times in training, performed now for real on the moon, with Houston listening and 600 million people on Earth watching a grainy black and white television signal transmitted across 238,000 miles of space. The hatch swings inward. Beyond it, the ladder, and beyond the ladder, the surface. You move carefully, deliberately backing out of the hatch, feet first, the way the procedure requires. The spacesuit is bulky. You cannot see your own feet clearly, cannot feel the ladder rungs through the thick gloves, must trust the training and the suit and the procedure to get you from the cabin to the surface safely. The ladder has 9 rungs. You descend them one at a time. On the last rung you pause. Below you, visible now, is the footpad of the Eagle's landing leg. And beyond the footpad, stretching in every direction to the close horizon, the surface of the moon. Grey and fine and absolutely still, lit by the low-angle sun casting long, sharp shadows from every small rock and every irregularity in the ancient regolith. You are the lowest human being has ever been on another world. One step further and you will be lower still. You step off the ladder. Your left boot touches the surface. The regolith compresses very slightly under your weight, about 1/8 of an inch the engineers estimated, and the estimate was correct. The surface is firm, solid, it holds you. You are standing on the moon. The moment lasts a fraction of a second before the professional takes over. The trained observer, the test pilot, the astronaut whose job right now is to report accurately to Houston and to history what this is like. You look down at your boot. You note the quality of the surface. You look around at the landscape, and then you speak. That's one small step for man. You meant to say a man, the article lost in the moment, in the weight of it, in the fact that no amount of preparation can fully prepare a person for standing on the moon and knowing that 600 million people are watching. One giant leap for mankind. The words go out at the speed of light. 1¼ seconds later, they arrive on Earth. In living rooms and bars and town squares in every country on the planet, people hear them. Some of them cry. Some of them simply sit very still for a moment, unable to quite process that this has happened, that a human being is standing on the surface of another world and saying words that will be remembered for as long as there are people to remember them. You take a few steps away from the ladder. The surface is easy to walk on, easier than the simulation suggested. The 1/6 gravity means you weigh 27 pounds instead of 165, and the suit, heavy on Earth, is manageable here. You find a comfortable loping stride, slightly different from walking but natural once you find the rhythm. You stop and look around. The Sea of Tranquility extends in every direction to the close horizon. The sky above is absolutely black, no atmosphere, no scattered light, just the black of space and the stars burning in it with the fixed brilliance you have seen from orbit. The sun is low on the horizon, its light falling across the surface at a shallow angle that makes every small rock cast a shadow many times its own length. It is beautiful, not in the easy photogenic way of a landscape on Earth, in a harder, stranger way, the beauty of something utterly alien that is also unmistakably real. A world, a whole world, with its own history and its own geology and its own silence that predates everything you know. You are the first person to stand in this silence. You think briefly about the 6-year-old boy in Wapakoneta, Ohio, in a corrugated metal airplane. About every flight since then, every decision, every year of work that led here. Then you get back to work. There is a lunar sample to collect, the contingency sample, scooped into a bag immediately in case the EVA has to be cut short. and equipment to deploy and photographs to take, and the surface to document in the systematic way that science requires. But for just a moment before the work begins again, you stand on the moon, and the moon holds still around you, and the earth turns slowly in the black sky overhead. And something that has been moving toward this moment for 4.5 billion years, the age of the solar system, the age of the moon, the whole long improbable journey from the first single-celled life in the primordial ocean to a species that builds rockets and flies them to other worlds, arrives here at this footprint in ancient grey dust, and rests one small step, one giant leap. The EVA is scheduled to begin in approximately 3 hours. You should sleep. Your body knows it. The fatigue that has been accumulating since the launch on July 16th, 4 days ago, is real and significant. The landing used the kind of focused attention that depletes something in the nervous system that sleep must replenish. In 3 hours, you will put on your spacesuit and depressurize the cabin and open the hatch and climb down a ladder and step onto the surface of the moon, and you want to be rested for that. You close your eyes. The hammock is strange beneath you, or rather above you, the slight tension of the nylon the only thing distinguishing it from floating freely in the 1/6 gravity. Your body is weightless enough that there is no pressure on any part of you, no shoulder digging into a mattress, no hip pressing against a surface, just the even light support of the hammock across your back. Outside the window, the moon is still. The earth turns slowly in the black sky. The environmental system hums its constant note. You think about Wapakoneta, about the corrugated metal airplane, about your mother's face and your father's watching you go, about Janet and the boys at home in Houston, watching the mission on television, living the same hours you are living, but from 240,000 miles away. About all the people watching, 600 million of them, the estimates say. 1 in 6 human beings alive on Earth right now, watching a small black and white television screen, waiting for a door to open on the surface of another world. Waiting for you. You breathe slowly, in and out. The moon holds still around you. 3 hours. You can sleep for 2 of them. Outside the window, the Sea of Tranquility is absolutely still. The Eagle sits on its landing legs, its gold foil insulation bright where the sun catches it, its shadow long and sharp on the grey surface. The landing legs have compressed slightly under the weight of the spacecraft. The moon's surface, scientists had worried for years, might be too soft to support a landing. It was not. It was solid. The Eagle sits as firmly as anything ever built by human hands could sit. Somewhere in the grey regolith around the landing legs, visible if you pressed your face to the window and looked down, there are marks left by the footpads when they touched down. The first marks human technology ever made on another world. Shallow indentations in the ancient grey powder, edges sharp and clear in the airless stillness, preserved already for longer than human civilization has existed. In a few hours there will be footprints, yours and Buzz's, pressed into the regolith in the low-angle sunlight of the lunar morning, photographed and measured and preserved by the absence of everything that would erase them on Earth. Those footprints will be there when the sun expands and swallows the inner solar system billions of years from now. They will be there when everything that calls itself humanity has become something so different from what you are tonight that the word no longer applies. They will outlast every book ever written, every building ever built, every record ever kept. 2 human footprints on the moon. The Earth turns in the black sky. The spacecraft hums. The moon is very still. Sleep now. 3 hours. And then one small step.